Hello everyone, welcome to the Natural Grid Search webinar. I am Andres Villalba. I am a sales engineer at Sencha, and today I'm going to be showing you how to integrate ChatGPT with an XJS grid. Of course, this can be extrapolated into any other kind of grid, and we're going to be building a simple example first where we have a form, and I show you how to convert that into JSON data by using ChatGPT. And then we're going to take that example and actually apply it to the grid that I have here as an example. So it will look something like this. As you can see, I have a prompt window over here, and I can type something. We're going to have a grid that has a name, age, email, status, country, sales, and the date it was created. So first, we're going to see how this works by having ChatGPT transform something. For example, I'm just going to tell it, show users that are 50 years old or older. I'm going to submit. This is connecting to Node.js. Node.js is connecting to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is returning those filters. Okay, so what else? I can add several filters and have an AOL account order by, let's say, country. Gonna submit, and as you can see, it's communicating once again, and it's going to give me this data over here. Okay, it's important to note that this JSON that you're seeing here, I'm gonna feed it into XJS, and it's gonna apply everything that it needs. If I was doing this instead on the backend, maybe I would get this instead of filters, just as a basic query for a database, although I would have to validate to avoid injection and things like that. But I could do it in the backend. Right now I'm doing it in the front end. And as you can see, what we got here is a filters property that has both filters just in the way that XJS needs it, and also have a sorters property, and it has the property and the direction. Okay, now if I try that same thing over here and hit enter, you're gonna see that it's going to do the same thing. But now we're gonna see the result on the grid. So here's the filter, and as you can see, we have a value that it's higher than 49. Okay, we also have an email that contains at AOL.com, and it's sorted by country. Okay, I added a button there to clear the filters, although the sorting is still the same. Okay, and we can try different things. Let's say, show me active and pending users. And that's going to return the same thing. It's going to return the filter that it's required to show that. So this is pretty interesting. Let me show you how this is going to work. So let's continue. So this is an idea of what we're going to be doing today. We're going to build a real-world application that uses ChatGPT, Node.js, and Next.js. Of course, with the example we're going to be building, we're going to learn how to enhance applications with all these natural language capabilities. We're going to see a full example from the backend to the front end. So while I still have a few things built already for us, we're going to see how to build that Node.js example and how to build the front end with XJS. And at the end, we're going to have a live Q&A. If you have any questions, please leave them in the panel if you're watching this live, and we will do our best to answer as many questions as we can at the end. Like I was saying, we are going to be learning how to structure a useful prompt for this. We're going to learn how to wire up Node.js with ChatGPT. We're going to integrate ChatGPT into an Next.js UI, of course, with Node.js in the middle, like I just said. And we're going to learn exactly what to tell ChatGPT so that it returns the JSON data that we need. And that takes us to the agenda for today. We're going to go through a brief introduction. We're going to learn how to optimize a prompt, although we're not going to use that exact one that I'm going to show you first. We're going to be building the server with Node.js. Then we're going to be building the front end with XJS. And finally, we're going to connect everything together. I know I have said this a lot of times before, but this is our tech stack. We're going to have Node.js, XJS, and ChatGPT. And as you can see here, this is the way it's going to communicate. We type our prompt, it's gonna be sent to Node.js, then that's gonna be sent to ChatGPT. ChatGPT is gonna return the data we need, and Node.js is gonna send it back to Sencha. Okay, now we're gonna be building that first prompt. So we have to follow what the best practices are. We have to be clear, and we also have to be goal-oriented. We need an structured output. We need to check for possible errors or unsupported filters. We're gonna have to map the natural language to a schema, and we also are going to need feedback. Our prompt will have to be broken down into the following 6 parts. We're going to specify a role and task for clarity. We are going to define our schema. We are going to specify the output format. We are going to specify the operator mapping. We're also going to add a few fail-safes, and we're going to add the user input into our prompt. So let's talk a little bit about this. This is the role and task clarity. We should start our prompt with this or something similar. You are an assistant that helps convert user natural language queries into structured filters for a data grid. Okay, this is just supposing we're only having filters. Of course, I should say structured filters and sorters. Then we're going to add to that same prompt something like this. Use the following field schema. Name, it's a string. Age, it's a number. Email, it's a string. Status is a list of, and we provide the options, active, inactive, pending. Then we have created at, which is a date. We have the country, which is a string, and we have last month sales, which basically it's a number. Something interesting, we're gonna be able to just tell it to show us users created on a specific date, on a specific time period, or even on a year or a month. So I could tell it, show me the users created in July 2023. And it should give me anything from the 1st to the 31st of July. So that's quite also interesting. So let me show it to you. I can say it's here. Show me users created during 2023, let's say. And as you can see, it added the filters, and now it's showing anything from the last day of December before the last day of December 2023. There's an issue here. It should have said 31st. That's something that we can fix, but it's close enough for now. Then, like we said, we're gonna specify the output format. And as you can see, I'm saying respond only with a valid JSON object in the format compatible with XJS. And then I'm specifying the example. It says filters, it's got an array, and it's gonna say property with the field name, operator, of course with the operator, value, and some explanation. The explanation, I can omit it. It can be useful, but right now I'm just going to not use it. Then I also need to tell it what kind of operators we're going to use. For example, like for partial string matches, in for matching multiple values, like a list, between for date or numeric ranges. That's not exactly how it's going to work, but this is just an example. This might be useful for another type of grid. Then some fail-safes. Ignore fields not in the schema. If the query is unclear, return an empty filters array. Things like that, that it's going to be a fail-safe with any probable mistakes that will originate from ChatGPT. We're going to provide the user query. Of course, instead of putting user input here, what I'm going to do is just use Node.js to put the prompt there. And then I'll provide a few examples. I noticed that if I don't provide examples, sometimes data comes a little bit different. For example, if I'm using filters that have a range, it tries to give me separate filters, but XJS needs them inside the value property. So what I said is show users with last month sales between 1,000 and 1,500, then return it as this property, last month sales, value, and then I provided GT as the operator, 1,000, and LT that other value, and the type is number. So that's giving ChatGPT some examples to work with. Now, when it finds something that it's two values of numbers, it's gonna do it this way, the same with dates. What we can do, we could go into ChatGPT and just type what I was showing you. And let's just do that. Okay, and I did copy and paste a prompt that I have. It's basically covering everything that I just said. We're gonna look at this prompt later inside our example. But as you can see right at the end, I have input and I have here the user query. This is what comes from Node.js or from the user. What I'm going to do is let's just say show users that are between 30 and 40 years old. It's gonna receive that prompt and here it is. That's the result. And that's basically what we're going to be doing, but we're going to be using instead the OpenAI API, okay? And that's what we did before. If you remember over here, I can type the same thing and I should get, if not the same, a very similar response. So show users that are between 30 and 40 years old. And as you can see, that's the result I got, okay? What happens if I tell it to show me something that does not exist? Show users that have a phone number that starts with, I don't know, 555. If you remember, we don't have phone number data. So right now it is just saying could not process your query. Try again. Okay, we can be a lot more insightful with our answer. That's what I have right now. This is what I had to install for my backend. You don't need everything. You can do it with any other technology that you want. But I am using Node.js. So what I did is that I used Express, OpenAI, Course.env, and Body Parser. Express, I used it as a web service. OpenAI, of course, I needed to connect to ChatGPT. Course, just to enable cross-origin resource sharing. This will make it easier if I have different domains for the front and the backend. .env to put my API key there, and Body Parser to parse incoming JSON requests. Okay, so I needed all of those on my backend. Before we get started with our code, let me show you what else do we need. Of course, we need, like I said, our Node.js server. We need to have installed XJS, but we also need an API key from OpenAI. So we cannot actually go and start testing. We don't have a key. So there's a few things to take in mind. You need to create your account if you don't have it yet. You need to enable payments and you need to add some money to it. You need some credits. So for this webinar, for example, I just added $5 and that's it. I didn't add anything extra. I have been running a bunch of tests and all that I have right now, all that I have spent, it's $2. And that's basically it. Nothing else that I have needed. And as you can see, I ran some tests during July. I have some others during June. But that's it. I don't have that much money spent. How much are you going to spend per prompt? It depends on the size of the prompt. So right now I have a big prompt because I'm trying to fit everything in it. But one of the cool things here is that you can actually grab it and ask ChatGPT to improve it so that you spend a lot less credits. Okay, right now you can see that I have spent 29,000 credits, but that sounds like a lot. It's not a lot. So let me show you too. If you go into your OpenAI account, you can find your API keys and you can add one there. Okay, just by clicking on create new secret key, it's gonna create one for you, and that's the one I'm using. And you're gonna have to save that somewhere in your project. It's not a good idea to hard code it into your project. So what I did is that I'm using an environment variable, and that's where I put my key. I'll show it to you in a few minutes. We do have everything we need. So let's move on to our example. Let's build our backend, let's build our front end, and let's get ready to actually build this fun example. Okay, so that we don't have to start from scratch, I have already created an application and I have added a few sections that I'm gonna need for today's webinar. So basically what we have here, it's just two sections and they're empty right now. Okay, that's all we have. If you check our project, you will be able to see that we have an app folder. This is where my code is. We have a build folder where we build our project for production development or whatever we may need. We have our SDK, we have a resources folder, and we have a server folder. That one is not included with XJS. What I did is I created that folder, and that's where I have my Node.js server. Take in mind that usually I would put that server on a different domain on a different server. But for this example, I'm putting everything in the same one. It'll make it easier to work with and to explain it. So let's take a look at what we have inside our app folder. We have three folders inside of it: View, Store, and Model. View, as its name states, is where we have all the views for our project. When you create a new project, you will get this main folder, and this is where we have our main menu. So I went ahead, I checked that out, and I changed the section that we have at the end. As you can see, the icons come from Font Awesome, and the title is here. So I have those two sections over here. And then inside my AI folder, I created the views and the controllers for those views that I'm going to be showing you. And then inside of store, we have a few stores there. Personnel comes with XJS as an example, but data store is the one that I created. I will be explaining that one in a few minutes. And model is where we explain the data that comes from our store. I'm not using it in this example. I'm putting that description inside the actual store. And what about Node.js? Well, in my server folder, as you can see, I have a bunch of files here too. Of course, I created my Node.js folder. Of course, I included every required package that we talked about before. And as you can see, I created this server file. I added some comments at the beginning, but basically here I'm requiring Express, course, body parser. I'm pointing to those endpoints. I'm also defining some course URL so that I can work with cross-origin without an issue. And then I'm specifying the API where that is pointing. And as you can see, it's pointing to endpoints interpret prompt. So over here, that's what we have. Right now, it's not doing anything. Basically, I'm just also making sure that I have every variable that I need there. I'm going to come back to the server in a few minutes, but let's go and build those views right now. So basically, first, I'm going to go into our test window, and we're going to add everything we need. And as you can see, it has pretty much nothing. It has a background color, a centered layout, a link controller. Notice that I have to link it by using requires to load the file, and controller to actually link to the controller. And the controller is also empty for now. If I want to place any items inside of it, I need to use the items property, and there I can put everything that I need. So I'm going to be taking a few things from my notes. So I'm just going to be copying and pasting to be a little bit quicker. But let's start with this. So I have a panel, and inside that panel, I'm going to put a form. That form is going to be titled prompt test. This is the width and the height it's going to have. And it's also going to have a layout. And that layout is going to be a VBox, meaning it's going to have something vertical, something on the top, and something on the bottom. In the same way that I have items for the panel, I can have items for the contents of the form. So I'm going to put the first item there. In this case, this is going to be the results panel. Notice that I give it a reference. This will make it easy for the controller to load the data into this panel. Okay, something basic, it's a panel. This is a reference. At the beginning, it's empty. The flex value, it means that it's going to grab as much space as it can. It has a body padding so that there's a margin around the contents. It is scrollable, and I added some body style to change the font type, change the size, the background color, and the actual text color. Okay, I'm gonna add another item. Okay, so after this one, I'm going to add the panel where I'm gonna type my prompt. But right now, that's also going to be a panel with a height of 60 pixels. And now its layout is going to be HBox, meaning something on the left and something on the right. That way, I'm gonna display the text box and then the button. So let me put those two children here, and here they are. So the first one is a text field, also with a flex value, an empty text property, meaning this is what it's going to show when there's no text on the field. I have also given it a reference name. Once again, that's going to make it easy to load the data from the controller. I'm adding key events. That way I can check if enter is pressed. If that's the case, then I'm going to submit whatever it's entered. Or I'm gonna use the button, and if somebody clicks on the submit button, I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, this is what in both cases is doing. Notice that it's trying to load a submit prompt method on the controller. So if I'm using JavaScript code here, I have to load the controller and then call the method. However, if I'm not using a listener like this one, I'm just using a handler, I can put the name of the function right here and it's going to look for it. So just put it over here. And here I'm just going to say convert prompt. That way we will be able to see if that's working. So now this is what I have. Of course, I can type and nothing is going to happen because I'm not really calling the backend. But as you can see, whenever I click on submit, I get that log over here. Okay, but before we go ahead and work the functionality on the front end, we need a working backend. So let's move to the server. So like I said, the server file is fine. I'm going to move into the interpret prompt file. Okay, and there I'm going to be a little bit fast on how I explain it. But the main idea is that I got my code at the beginning and I have to end this file with this line over here. First thing that I need to do, it's actually start OpenAI. So let me get that from my notes. And this is what I'm doing. I'm getting OpenAI and I'm sending my key. This key is coming from my environment file. Basically, I have a key over there that is called OpenAI API key, and that's what it's bringing. If I don't want to do it that way, I can put my key right here, and that should also work. Okay, but right now, I think this works a lot better, and at least my key is hidden. Then what I'm going to do is actually check the prompt. So let's do this here. Check the prompt. Okay, let me close that. So here's my router, and I'm checking for a post. So here what I'm going to be doing is getting the actual user query. This is coming from the front end. And I'm going to create a short prompt. By prompt, I mean the actual prompt that I'm going to send to ChatGPT. Just to be safe, what I'm going to do next is going to be between a try and catch instruction here. Okay, so let me just put it like that. Let's say right now if something goes wrong, well, let's just tell it to actually give me an error. Okay, then inside the try part of my statement, what I'm going to be doing is actually connecting to ChatGPT and sending the prompt. Okay, as you saw here, I'm calling a method that I don't yet have that I'm going to create in a few minutes, but this is going to return the prompt. Well, now I'm going to send it. So let's put this here. Basically, I'm using OpenAI and I am creating this communication. Basically, I'm telling it to use model GPT-4. This is going to spend more tokens than if I used GPT 3.5. But this works a lot better. That's why I'm using this one. Then I'm adding a role, which is system. I'm telling it you convert queries to XJS filters. Okay. And then role user, and this is where my prompt goes. So whatever I have here, it'll go to ChatGPT. Okay. Then what I'm going to do next is validate that what we got, it's actually correct. Okay. So if completion or not completion choices, or if there is not a value inside that array, then I'm going to say that I got an invalid GPT response. And then I'm just going to throw an error. What's next? If everything is working correctly, then I'm going to extract the contents, and that comes here. And that's what I'm calling the GPT raw response. Notice that I added this line just to show something on my console, but I don't need to do it. I can take it out. That's why I also have this one over here. I can just set it to false and I won't get anything on my console. Okay, and after that, I'm gonna fix it a little bit. I'm gonna extract the JSON block. Okay, just in case there's something else, I'm gonna extract it by doing this. And if something happens, well, I'm just gonna say that I could not extract it and throw an error too. And we're almost done. Once we get to that point, I'm going to parse the JSON. So match 0 is the one that has the value. I'm gonna send it into this variable. and that it's going to go into my response. Okay, that looks like a lot, but that is what we needed. And what we are missing is the main part, our method, that method that we're calling create short prompt. So I can put it anywhere I want in this file. I'm gonna put it just here. I'm gonna say the prompt. Okay. This one receives the user query, which is something short like show me users that are between 20 and 30 years old or something like that. And it's going to add everything else that we need. So it's gonna say return. And here I'm going to return what I need. Remember what we talked about when I was showing you the slides before. That's what I'm going to be doing here. However, I have optimized this query with a lot of testing and a lot of different options. So I'm going to get it from my notes instead of just following the steps that we talked about. Like we said before, we should tell it what it's going to be doing. So I have something a little bit shorter here. Convert natural language to XJS 7 filter JSON. Then I'm gonna tell it the fields that I need. So here they are: name, age, email, status, created at, country, and last month sales. Okay? Then I'm gonna tell it what the operators and the types are. So these are the ones that I'm going to allow. And then comes the most important part, the rules. And here I am saying for strings, use like. For list, use in. For number and dates, use LT, EQ within object values. Numbers, filter must follow the following format. This is something on how it is required. Okay, so basically I'm just saying property and the name of the property, value, and then that's the operator, either GT, LT, or EQ, and the value. Same thing for dates. I'm not using wildcards. So I'm telling it not to use any kind of wildcards, okay? Why? Because Sencha does not like that wildcard on our filters. They work fine if we do the filtering in the backend, but that's not what I'm doing today. Then I'm telling it to use double quotes in JSON. If you don't add this line, sometimes it's gonna give you the JSON with just single quotes. I'm telling it that the filters must come inside a filter, parameter, or property, and each filter must have a property, type, operator, and value. Usually, that should be enough, but I noticed that it wasn't working completely, so I added a few examples. I told you about this before, that says show users with last month sales between 1,000 and 1,500. And I showed what the response should be. And then I did the same with an example with a string, another one with a date, another one with a full date, and another one with just a year. So I can provide a few examples. I don't need to provide examples for everything. That will make it easier for ChatGPT to understand. Okay? If I were creating just the filtering part of my grid, that would be more than enough. I would just add input and output. And this is where I'm adding that user query that I'm receiving as a parameter. Okay? However, when I was working with this, I decided to also add sorters. So the same thing applied. I said sort, add sorters with property plus direction, either ascending or descending. And then I added a few rules for it. Must be compatible with XJS sorters, use property and direction. Sorters must come inside a sorters parameter. Okay, let's run our server. So I'm going to open a terminal window. And here I'm going to enter my folder named server, and I'm going to run the server. So basically I'm just gonna say node server.js. If everything is fine, it should stop there. Now that we have it running, let's go and finish our view. So we're gonna go work on this method from the test window controller. As you remember, we have this submit prompt, which is called whenever we click on the button or hit enter while typing a prompt. Let's do a few things at the beginning. First, I'm going to use the me variable. This is a scope variable that I will be using to make it easier to work with. Basically, this is the controller since that's where I am at. Then I'm gonna have a view variable that is going to get the linked view. then a references variable, which is going to get all the references that I have on my view. Remember that I have the actual prompt and I also have the result panel. And then I am also going to get the actual query. So from the references, I'm going to get the value from the prompt. Okay, so now let's check that the query it's not empty. So since this is a string, I'm just going to check that it's longer than 0 characters. Okay, if that's the case, I'm going to mask the view panel. That way, and no one can type anything else. Okay, when this is done, I'm going to unmask. We can send the data to the backend in several different ways. Right now, I'm just gonna use an Ajax call. Okay, so I'm just gonna say something like this. And here, I'm gonna put the URL, the method, and the JSON data. So as you know, this is the URL that I have. Okay, this could be something different, but this is where my server is running. API is because I set up my server like that, and this is the name of the actual endpoint. I'm sending it with a post method, and this is the data. Okay, then Ajax calls have a success property that receives the response, and it also has a failure property. Okay, so let me just unmask right at the beginning. So if something worked or went wrong, right when we come back from the backend, the mask is going to be removed. If there's a failure, what I'm going to do right now is just display an error message that says that the query could not be processed. And let's process that response. So what I'm going to be doing, it's just getting it from response text. Okay, so that's where the data comes. This is a string. The code is going to turn it into a JSON object. And usually what I would do is I would just call references result. If you remember, that's the panel where my result is going to be showing up, and just send the result. However, this is a JSON object and this is expecting a string. So right now, I'm just going to encode it again to display it. That's not actually what I'm going to be doing in the end, but I just wanted to show it how that's working. So let's check it out. So users 30 years or older. Hit enter, and when it comes back, I get the information right there. Okay, but it doesn't look nice. So let's go ahead and fix that. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I have a method that I created before that basically is going to highlight what I received. So this is going to change a few colors, basically looking for some keys, and then it's going to add some CSS to make it look nice. And also, instead of using encode here, what I'm going to do is the following. I'm going to add stringify, which will give it extra spaces to make it look a little bit better. And then I'm going to call my new method that is going to change the colors. And afterwards, instead of doing it this way, this is going to concat a pre-cache to the result. So I know it's a lot of things to do here, but remember, this is not what we will be doing actually with the grid. This is just to see how it's working. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Like I said, this should work a lot better. So let's go and try it once again. Show users younger than 50. And now when it comes back, it makes a lot more sense, right? I can also say sort by creation. And now it's going to have both keys, the filters and the sorters. Really nice, right? Okay. So also for those colors, I'm not explaining much, but let me tell you that I just went into index and I added a style tag there, and that's where I have those colors. I could have added an actual CSS file. I didn't care. This is just an example. I did it that way. Now, we want to do that with our data, but we don't have a grid right now. If you look at what we have, it's an empty space there. So let's go ahead and build that grid. So as you can see, this is quite empty. It does have some plugins for the filters, but I'm not actually doing anything right now. It is not connecting to a store, so I'm putting it there now. So this is going to connect to the store that we have over here. Just like with the controller, we have to require that file, app store data store, app store data store, and we have to call its type, which is the alias that we have here. The store works just like this. It extends from the basic XJS store, has an alias. It must describe the fields. So the name is a string, the age is an integer, and so on. This is really important because if we don't do this, the date filter is not going to work correctly. I need to specify it here. Also, I'm telling it that the remote filters are not active. Filters are going to work on the front end. Then I have specified a proxy and I'm loading the data from the server. Notice that the data right now is just a JSON file. Usually this should also be an endpoint that gets me the data from the database. But this is an example, so I'm leaving it just like that. And that JSON has several properties. It has a root property, a total property, and a success property. So those three are here. And if we go and check that data, it comes like this. There's the count. It's telling me that I have 100 rows. Success because it has been loaded successfully. And then I have all the data. Okay. As a side note, I created this data with ChatGPT 2. Okay, so the data store is fine. The data grid has no data yet, no columns, but at least it's connecting to the store. Oh, something important. I also added the property auto load, which will make it so that the store loads exactly at the beginning. Now I'm going to add the columns. Okay, and I'm going to have a bunch of them. The first three are pretty straightforward, so I'm just going to copy and paste. Have the name, the age, and an email. So you can see I added a filter. The first is a string, then a number, then a string too. Okay. The next one is a status column. Okay. So basically here, I have also the title, the data index. That's how it loads from the backend. This must match what I have on my JSON. Then the width, and then the filter, instead of just being its type, it's an actual object that contains the type and the options that I have available. Also, I added a renderer. This is optional, but the renderer is going to check the value. And if the value is active, it's going to give it a green color. If it's inactive, it's going to give it a red color. And if it's pending, it's going to be yellow. And then I change the metadata style, changing the color and returning the same value. So that one was a little bit more complex. And the other ones are quite simple. So let's copy and paste the missing ones. So we have country, we have sales. In this case, I'm using formatter to make it look like US money. I could have also used a renderer and added the pound sign myself. And then I have date column, and I'm also giving it a format. Notice that I'm using year, month, day for a more international format. If we go and take a look at this, we will be able to see that I have the data and I have a basic function here. Okay, I can still sort, I can still search if I wanted to, say less than 30, but I am doing everything by hand. Now I want that prompt over there. So in Next.js, we can add a toolbar. There are different types of toolbars. Right now, I'm going to be using a top toolbar in which we use the T-bar property. There's also a B-bar for bottom toolbar, and there are a few others. Okay. Now, the first element is just going to be some text. So just like that. And the second element, it's going to be my actual search field. Okay. Then I'm going to add a button at the right where I clear my filters. This will make it easier to test. So I'm using another string, which is just an arrow that is going to push everything that comes after this string and push it to the right. And as you can see, I have on query enter and I also have on clear filters click. Let's go to the controller. Okay, as you can see, I have it linked here. So let's go to the controller, which is empty right now. And the first thing I'm going to do is clear the filters. So I'm going to add this method. This is what it's doing. From the button that it receives, it's getting the grid, and then it's getting the plugin, and it's clearing the filters. Okay, that's simple. What about the text field? Well, that one is calling the onQueryEnter method. Okay, so I am also going to be a little bit fast with that one. This is what I have. It receives the field and the event. So I'm checking if I'm pressing the enter button. If that's the case, I get whatever the user type. Then I get the grid. And after that, I'm going to apply that natural language filter. This is a method also created by me. And I know that you are guessing exactly what I'm going to do here because it's what I already did in the test window controller, at least the beginning. This time around, I do need to get the filters. So first thing, I'm gonna get the filters. I'm gonna get the store, okay? And remember that I'm passing two parameters, the grid and the query. I'm gonna put them there. And after that, I'm going to do the Ajax request. Okay, so let's put it here. Okay, and remember, we're gonna have a failure and a success method. So let's start with the success one, and then let's put the failure at the bottom. The failure is going to be the same than what we did before. Okay, and let's actually unmask the grid here. As you know, we should first get the response and save it under our result variable. Then we're gonna check if there are filters or sorters. So I'm gonna add if result filters just to check if it exists, and the same for sorters. Okay, I'm gonna do the second one first because that one's easier. Basically, if there's a sorter, sort the store. Whatever comes from the backend should work. Okay, now otherwise, if we have filters, let's first clear them. That way, we're not gonna mix the filters that we already had with the new ones. And then we are going to loop through those filters. That's not required. This is because of the way I work. When I work with the filters, notice that I have property, value, operator, and type. However, XJS does not understand property for filters. It needs data index instead. So that's why I'm looping through those, so that I convert that property into data index. Of course, I could have corrected this from the backend. My prompt could have said data index instead of property. But I wanted to show you, just in case you have to fix something, you could still do it. Okay, you don't need to stay with what comes from the backend from ChatGPT. You can apply some fixes. So right now I'm doing this one fix and another one because we are pretty much done. There's one thing that we're missing. If the filter is a date, we need to change the type. We need to grab that date and turn it into an actual date object. So that's what I'm doing here. If the filter type is date, I'm grabbing it and turning GT, which is greater than LT and EQ, into an actual date object. I think we are done. Let's go and test this out. Hopefully it works. Let's see. Show users under 30. And there it is. It worked. Okay. Say filter. No, actually, sorry. And sort by age descending. And once again, there it is. Okay. Let's try something different. show users with an AOL account. Okay, and you can see I have users created on different dates, let's say, and created during 2020. See if it understands that. And as you can see, that's what it's showing me. So if we go into email, you can see that there's the filter, and we go into created ad, you can see that here's the other filter. Okay, so this is pretty much it. There's a lot of more things that we could actually do, but we are running out of time. Probably all that I can say right now is that you could probably just grab this, copy, go into ChatGPT, paste it, and tell it to optimize it. That way, this prompt will be shorter. It will still work, and it will require less tokens. But since we have run out of time, let's move on to our Q&A, where I'll try to answer to the best of my knowledge. So thank you, and let's move on.